The gun wasn't loaded. Flora would realize that later, much later, when her hand stopped shaking and her heart remembered how to beat at a normal rhythm. But in that moment, with the cold metal pressed against her temple and a stranger's breath hot against her neck, all she knew was terror so pure it turned her blood to ice. And her husband, Cheng Mao, the man who hadn't touched her in 4 months of marriage, the man everyone whispered was gay, was across their Seoul penthouse living room. And the look on his face, God, the look on his face made her forget about the gun entirely. Move and she dies, the intruder hissed in Korean. Cheng Mao's response was in English, and his voice was so cold it could freeze hell itself. You have 3 seconds to take your hands off my wife before I show you what I'm actually capable of. The man laughed, pressing the gun harder against Flora's skull. The great Cheng Mao. Everyone says you're soft. Everyone says you're... He never finished the sentence. Flora didn't even see Cheng Mao move. 1 second he was standing near the door. The next the intruder was on the floor, the gun skittering across marble, and Cheng Mao's hand was wrapped around the man's throat with a grip that promised death. You pointed a weapon at my wife. Each word was punctuated with pressure. You put your hands on what belongs to me. Give me one reason why I shouldn't kill you right now. Cheng Mao. Flora's voice came out strangled, terrified not of the intruder anymore but of her husband, this stranger wearing her husband's face. His eyes snapped to hers, and what she saw there stole her breath. Possession, fury, fear, and something else, something raw and desperate that made her knees weak. Are you hurt? He didn't release the intruder, but his voice gentled fractionally when addressing her. Flora, answer me. Did he hurt you? She shook her head, mute, because what was she supposed to say? How was she supposed to process this when just this, in morning he'd barely looked at her over breakfast? Police sirens wailed in the distance. Someone must have called them. But Cheng Mao didn't seem to hear them. He was still staring at Flora, like she was the only thing in the world that mattered. You're shaking, he said, and finally released the intruder who gasped and coughed on the floor. Cheng Mao crossed to her in 3 long strides, and then his hands were on her face, tilting her head back, checking for injuries with a thoroughness that felt almost medical. Except his hands were trembling. Tell me he didn't hurt you. Tell me. I'm fine, Flora whispered. Cheng Mao, I'm fine. But you were supposed to be in Busan for another 2 days. How did you? I felt it. The confession seemed ripped from somewhere deep inside him. I was in the middle of negotiating a merger worth billions, and I felt this panic that wasn't mine, like someone was squeezing my chest, like I couldn't breathe. And I just knew. I knew. Something was wrong. His forehead dropped to hers, and the vulnerability in that gesture nearly destroyed her. So I left, chartered a helicopter, flew back in the middle of a thunderstorm because I had to make sure you were safe. But why? Flora's voice broke. Why would you care? This isn't real. You married me for appearances. You don't even like women. Everyone says everyone is wrong. He pulled back just enough to look at her, and the intensity in his dark eyes made her forget how to breathe. Everyone has been wrong about me for years, and I let them be wrong because it was easier than the truth. But you... His jaw clenched. And anyone who threatens you threatens me. I don't care what rumors they believe. I don't care what they think they know. Touch what's mine and I'll burn the world down. The police burst through the door then, and the moment shattered. But as Cheng Mao moved away to deal with the authorities, as Flora sank onto the pristine white sofa, with a blanket someone draped over her shoulders, all she could think was, who is this man I married? Because this story doesn't start with guns and confessions and helicopter rides through thunderstorms. This story starts 5 months earlier, in her parents' cramped apartment in Lagos, where Flora's entire future was about to be sold to save her family from ruin. If you want to know how a Nigerian woman and a Korean billionaire went from a cold arrangement to something so consuming it defied logic, reason, and every rule they'd set, stay until the very end. Because what happens next will wreck you, heal you, and make you believe in impossible love. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support keeps these stories coming. Now, let's go back to where it all began. The thing about being the eldest daughter was that you inherited responsibilities you never asked for. Flora had understood this from the time she could walk, watching her mother stretch meager resources, seeing her father's shoulders bow under debt, knowing that her dreams existed only if they served the family first. But she'd never imagined it would come to this. His name is Cheng Mao, her father said, not meeting her eyes. He's Korean Chinese, 33 years old, CEO of Cheng Industries, net worth somewhere around 900 billion won. Flora stood frozen in the doorway, her mind refusing to accept what her ears were hearing. Papa, what are you saying? I'm saying he's agreed to marry you. Her father finally looked up, and the shame in his eyes was worse than any anger. In exchange, his company will clear our debts. All of them. You'll live in Seoul. You'll want for nothing. The room tilted. You're selling me. Don't be dramatic, her mother cut in sharply. This is an opportunity. Do you know how many girls would die for a chance like this? Then let them. Flora's voice rose despite her attempt at control. I want to marry a stranger. I don't want to leave Nigeria. I have a life here. What? Her father interrupted, standing now. What do you have, Flora? A degree that's gotten you nowhere because there are no jobs? A boyfriend who can't even afford to take you to a decent restaurant? Dreams that won't pay your mother's medical bills or your brother's school fees? That's not fair. Fair? Her father's laugh was bitter. Nothing about this is fair. But life isn't fair, and I'm out of options. The Chinese investors backed out. The banks have given us 30 days before they take everything. This house, your brother's education, your mother's treatment, everything. Unless I find capital. And Mr. Cheng has offered it in exchange for marriage to you. Flora felt tears burning but refused to let them fall. And what does this Cheng Mao get out of it? Why would a billionaire need to buy a wife from Nigeria? Silence. The kind that meant her parents were hiding something. Mama, why does he need a wife? Her mother's lips pressed into a thin line. There are rumors about him in Korea. About his preferences. He needs a wife to stop the speculation. You need security. It's a fair arrangement. Understanding crashed over her like cold water. He's gay. You're marrying me to a gay man who needs me as a cover. We don't know that for certain, her father said quickly. And even if it's true, does it matter? You'll live like a queen, Flora. He's promised you'll have freedom, your own space, everything you need. Except love, except choice, except the future I wanted. Her voice cracked. I was going to start my master's program next year. Your master's program costs money we don't have, her mother said flatly. Money Mr. Cheng is offering. Stop being selfish and think about this family. Selfish? Flora stared at her mother in disbelief. I'm being selfish? The contract is already signed, her father said quietly. The first payment has been transferred. You leave for Seoul in 3 weeks. The floor dropped out from under her. You signed before asking me? I did what I had to do. Her father wouldn't meet her eyes. And so will you. Flora ran from the room before they could see her cry. Seoul was a shock to every sense Flora possessed. The cold bit through her jacket like teeth. The airport was a cathedral of glass and steel, and Korean characters she couldn't decipher. And everywhere, people stared at her dark skin like she was a creature from another planet. This place is insane, her friend Amara whispered beside her. She'd insisted on coming as Flora's support, using her savings for the ticket. Are you sure about this? No. Flora's voice was hollow. But what choice do I have? They cleared customs and found a man in an expensive suit holding a sign with her name. Miss Flora, he said with a slight bow. I am Secretary Kim. Mr. Cheng sends his regrets that he could not collect you personally. He's been detained by urgent business. Of course he has. Even meeting his purchased bride took second place to business. The drive to Gangnam was surreal. Seoul looked like the future, neon lights bleeding into rain-slicked streets, skyscrapers that seemed to pierce the clouds, everything moving with precision and purpose. It was beautiful and cold and utterly overwhelming. The building they stopped at looked like it cost more than Flora's entire neighborhood back home. Mr. Cheng's residence, Secretary Kim announced. Penthouse level. Your belongings will be brought up shortly. The penthouse was obscene. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Furniture that looked like abstract art. Everything white and chrome and impossibly pristine. It looked like a museum, not a home. Mr. Cheng will meet you for dinner tonight at 8. The restaurant is Gaon. A car will collect you at 7:30. Please dress formally. Then he left, and Flora was alone in a golden cage. Flora, Amara, grabbed her hand. We can still leave. We can figure out something else. But they couldn't. The money was transferred. The debts were paid. The contract was signed. I'll be fine, Flora lied. This is just business. I can handle business. She'd been sitting alone at the restaurant table for 43 minutes when he finally arrived. The other diners, wealthy Koreans, dripping in designer labels, had been throwing her pitying looks for the past 15 minutes. The waiters hovered with increasing awkwardness. Humiliation burned through Flora's veins like acid. She was about to leave when the restaurant went silent. Flora looked up and saw him. Cheng Mao moved through the space like he owned it, which he probably did. Tall, devastatingly handsome in a black suit that probably cost more than her father's debt. His features were sharp, almost cruel in their perfection. High cheekbones, defined jaw, lips that looked like they'd forgotten how to smile, and his eyes dark, intense, calculating, swept the room before landing on her. Flora's breath caught. The photos hadn't prepared her for this. For him, he reached her table without hurrying, and when he spoke, his English was flawless. "Miss Flora, you're late." She blinked. "I'm what?" "I specified 7:30 arrival. It's now 7:43. Punctuality is a basic courtesy." Fury replaced shock. Flora stood abruptly. "You're 43 minutes late to meet the woman you paid to marry, and you're lecturing me about punctuality?" Something flickered in his expression, surprise. "Maybe. I was held up by. I don't care." Flora grabbed her purse. "Tell Secretary Kim to book my flight home. Tell my father the deal is off. I'd rather live in poverty than marry someone who can't even show basic respect." She made it 3 steps before his hand caught her wrist. The touch sent electricity through her skin. "Wait, let me go, please." The word sounded like it cost him. "You're right. I was unconscionably rude. Please sit. Let me start again." Flora should have kept walking. Should have followed her instincts. But something in his voice, a crack in that perfect control, made her pause. 5 minutes, she said coldly. "Explain why I shouldn't leave." He released her immediately, hands raised slightly. Up close, she could see exhaustion shadowing his eyes, tension in his jaw. He looked like a man barely holding himself together. "I was late because I was in an emergency board meeting," he said finally. "They've been questioning my decision to marry someone they consider unsuitable." "Unsuitable," Flora repeated flatly. "Because I'm Nigerian. Because I'm black. Because you're not what they expected. Because this marriage threatens their carefully constructed narrative about who I should be." He paused. "I criticized your timing because I'm terrible at personal interactions, and I defaulted to business mode. It was inappropriate. I apologize." "You're not good at apologies." "No, I'm not good at most human interactions, which is why I need this arrangement." His expression remained neutral, but his hands clenched briefly. "The rumors about me are destroying business relationships. International partners are uncomfortable. The board questions my judgment. I'm tired of defending myself." "What is the truth?" Flora asked quietly. "Does it matter?" He leaned back, studying her. "You're here because your family needed money. I'm here because I need respectability. This is transactional. Pretending otherwise is inefficient." The word should have hurt. Instead, Flora felt something else. Recognition. Here was someone as trapped as she was. "Fine," she said. "Then let me be clear about my terms. I'll play the perfect wife in public. I'll smile for cameras, learn Korean etiquette, wear the right clothes. But in private, you treat me with respect. You show up when you say you will. You treat me like a human being, not a problem you paid to solve. Can you do that?" Something shifted in his expression. "Yes, I can do that." "Then we have a deal, Mr. Cheng." "Cheng Mao," he corrected. "If we're going to be married, use my name, Cheng Mao." The name felt strange in her mouth, foreign. "And you can call me Flora." Flora. The way he said it carefully, like he was learning its shape, made something flutter in her chest. After they ordered, Cheng Mao said, "I know you have a degree in business administration from the University of Lagos. I know you speak English, Yoruba, and Igbo. I know you wanted to pursue an MBA before your family's situation changed. I know your favorite food is jollof rice, which we won't find authentic versions of here, but I've located a West African restaurant in Itaewon that comes close." Flora didn't know whether to be impressed or disturbed. "You researched me. I research everything. It's how I've built my company." "Well, you missed one thing," Flora said. "My dreams aren't dead, just delayed. I'll play your wife, Cheng Mao. but I won't lose myself. And when this arrangement ends, when you don't need me anymore, I'm getting my life back. When this ends, he repeated softly. You're already planning the divorce? Aren't you? He was quiet for a long moment. No. I don't do anything halfway. If I'm getting married, I'm staying married. Divorce would be worse for my reputation than the rumors. Flora laughed bitterly. So I'm trapped forever in a loveless marriage to a man who might not even be attracted to women. What a fairy tale. Love is for children, Cheng Mao said flatly. What we have is better. Clear expectations. No messy emotions to complicate things. Flora should have been relieved. Instead, she felt hollow. What a lonely way to live. The dinner continued with careful, formal conversation. By the end, they'd established ground rules. Separate bedrooms, minimal physical contact beyond what was required for appearances. Weekly dinners to maintain the illusion. It was practical, efficient, everything Cheng Mao preferred. It was also the loneliest arrangement Flora had ever agreed to. When he drove her back to the penthouse, Cheng Mao walked her to the elevator with stiff formality. The wedding is in 3 weeks. I've hired a planner. You'll have fittings, Korean language lessons, etiquette training, media coaching. It will be intensive. I can handle intensive. I believe you can. He paused. Thank you. For not running. For giving this a chance despite how terrible I am at being human. Before Flora could respond, the elevator doors closed, and she rode up to her golden cage thinking, this is my life now. But what neither of them knew was that loneliness was about to become the least of their problems. Because arranged marriages built on business had a tendency to catch fire when no one was looking, and some fires burned so hot they consumed everything. The wedding was a spectacle. 300 guests, most of whom Flora had never met. A ceremony that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. Flash bulbs from media outlets Cheng Mao's publicist had carefully selected. Flora wore a custom gown that cost more than her parents' house and smiled until her face hurt. And through it all, Cheng Mao stood beside her like a statue, his hand on her waist only when cameras were near, his expression perfect and empty. At the reception, his business associates congratulated him with barely concealed curiosity. The Korean socialites who'd been vying for his attention looked at Flora with thinly veiled contempt, and Flora smiled and nodded and played her part while dying inside. You're doing well, Cheng Mao murmured during their first dance. His hand on her back was impersonal, mechanical. The press is eating it up. I'm so glad I'm performing adequately, Flora said sweetly, loud enough only for him to hear. His jaw tightened. That's not what I meant, isn't it? She met his eyes. Isn't that all this is? A performance? He didn't answer, just held her through the dance with careful distance, and when it ended, he disappeared into conversations with business partners, while Flora smiled at strangers and wondered how she'd survive this. That night, back at the penthouse, Cheng Mao walked her to her bedroom door. You did well today, he said formally. Get some rest. I have an early meeting. Cheng Mao. Flora stopped him before he could leave. Can I ask you something? He turned, guarded. What? The rumors. About you. Are they true? Silence stretched between them. Then, would it matter if they were? I want to know what I'm dealing with. I want to know if this, she gestured between them, if this will always be nothing. Something flickered in his expression. Pain, maybe. What do you want me to say, Flora? That I'm going to suddenly fall in love with you? That this arrangement will become a fairy tale? Because I can't promise that. I don't know how to be what you want. I'm not asking you to love me, Flora said quietly. I'm just asking if you'll ever see me. Really see me. Not as a solution to your problem, but as a person. Cheng Mao stared at her for a long moment. I see you, he said finally, his voice rough. More than you know. But seeing you and knowing what to do about it are two different things. Then he left, and Flora stood alone in the hallway, her heart pounding with something she couldn't name. The first month of marriage was ice. They maintained separate schedules, ate separate meals, existed in the same space like ghosts who never touched. Cheng Mao worked constantly 18-hour days that meant Flora barely saw him, and when she did, he was polite, distant, every inch the business partner she'd agreed to become. Flora tried to build a life. She enrolled in Korean language classes, started online courses toward her MBA, explored Seoul with the cautious wonder of someone who knew she didn't belong, And she called home, every week, lying to her mother about how happy she was while her father asked questions about Cheng Mao's business prospects. The loneliness was crushing. "You look miserable," Amara said during one of their video calls. She'd returned to Lagos after the wedding but checked in regularly. "Flora, if this is killing you, I'm fine." "You're not fine. You're trapped in a marriage with a man who treats you like furniture." "That's not fine. It's what I agreed to." Flora forced a smile. "And it's not so bad. The penthouse is beautiful. Seoul is interesting. I'm learning the language. It's fine." But it wasn't fine. It was slowly suffocating her. The cracks started to show in the second month. Flora was making breakfast something small, just for herself, since Cheng Mao always left before dawn when he appeared in the kitchen. He looked exhausted, his normally perfect appearance slightly disheveled. "You're up early," Flora said carefully. "Couldn't sleep." He moved to the coffee maker with mechanical efficiency. "I didn't mean to disturb you." "You're not disturbing me. This is your home." "It's your home too," he said, not looking at her. "You don't have to act like a guest." "Don't I?" The words came out sharper than Flora intended. "Cheng Mao, I've been here 2 months and I still don't know where half the things in this kitchen are kept. I have a bedroom I sleep in and a closet full of clothes someone else picked out. This doesn't feel like my home. It feels like a very expensive hotel." He turned then, something flickering in his expression. "I don't know." Flora set down her tea with more force than necessary. "Maybe act like I exist? Maybe have a conversation that isn't about schedules or appearances? Maybe acknowledge that this is weird and hard, and neither of us knows what we're doing?" "I know exactly what I'm doing," Cheng Mao said coldly. "I'm maintaining our arrangement as agreed." "Right. The arrangement." Flora laughed bitterly. "God forbid we be actual human beings to each other." She left the kitchen before he could respond, her heart pounding with frustration and something else she didn't want to name. But she felt his eyes on her back as she walked away, felt the weight of something unspoken between them. Things shifted after that morning. Small changes, barely noticeable. Cheng Mao started coming home for dinner occasionally. They'd eat in careful silence at first, but slowly, conversation started to happen. Small things. "How was your day? Did you finish your language class? The weather's supposed to be nice this weekend." He asked about her classes, her progress with Korean, whether she'd found the West African restaurant he'd mentioned. "It's good," Flora told him. "Not like home, but good. The owner is from Ghana. She asks about you sometimes. Wants to know if the famous Cheng Mao actually exists or if I made him up. What do you tell her? That I'm still trying to figure that out." Something almost like a smile crossed his face. The small changes accumulated. He started leaving notes when he had to leave early, just practical things. When he'd be back, whether she needed anything. But it was something. An acknowledgement that she existed. Flora started leaving the Korean news on in the morning, knowing he'd watch it over breakfast. Started keeping his preferred coffee stocked. Small gestures that felt absurd but somehow necessary. They were learning each other. Slowly. Carefully. Like two people trying to read a language neither of them spoke. And then, 3 months into the marriage, everything changed. Flora woke in the middle of the night to sounds in the living room. Crashes, a man's voice speaking rapid Korean. She grabbed her phone with shaking hands, about to call security, when her bedroom door burst open. The man who entered was young, desperate-looking, and holding a gun. Everything after that was a blur. The cold metal against her temple. Her own voice screaming Cheng Mao's name. The intruder dragging her out to the living room. And then Cheng Mao appearing like something out of a nightmare. And the look on his face, move and she dies. "You have 3 seconds to take your hands off my wife." And then chaos. Violence. The intruder on the floor. The gun skittering away. Cheng Mao's hands on her face, checking for injuries. And the fear in his eyes, raw, desperate, absolutely terrifying in its intensity. I felt it. I was in the middle of negotiating a merger worth billions. And I felt this panic that wasn't mine. And I just knew. I knew something was wrong. He came back for me, Flora thought numbly. He left a $1 billion deal and flew back in a thunderstorm because he felt I was in danger. "Why would you care?" she whispered. This isn't real. Everyone has been wrong about me for years," Cheng Mao said, his voice rough. "But you're my wife, Flora. Mine. And anyone who threatens you, threatens me." The The police arrived, took statements, arrested the intruder, apparently a disgruntled former employee seeking revenge. Flora answered questions in a daze, wrapped in a blanket, while Cheng Mao stood beside her like a sentinel, his hand on her shoulder. When they finally left, when the penthouse was quiet again, Flora stood in the middle of their wrecked living room and started shaking. Everything that hadn't hit her during the crisis crashed over her now. Flora. Cheng Mao was there immediately, pulling her against his chest. "You're safe. I've got you." "I thought he was going to kill me," she whispered into his shirt. "I thought." "He didn't. You're safe." His arms tightened around her. "I won't let anyone hurt you. Ever. Do you understand me?" Flora pulled back enough to look at him. Really look at him. At the fear still shadowing his eyes, the tension in his jaw, the way he was holding her like she might disappear. "The rumors," she said quietly. "About you. They're not true, are they?" Cheng Mao's expression shuddered. "Flora, are they?" He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "No, they're not true. They never were." "Then why?" "Because it was easier." He released her, stepping back, and she immediately missed his warmth. "In my industry, in my position, people make assumptions, and I let them. Because the truth." He stopped, jaw clenching. "What's the truth?" Flora asked softly. "The truth is that I'm not good at relationships, at emotional connections, at being what people need." He looked away. "The truth is that I watched my parents destroy each other with love, and I swore I'd never let that happen to me. So I built walls. And when people started assuming things about me, I let them, because it meant they stopped expecting me to feel things I didn't know how to feel." "And us?" Flora's heart was pounding. "What are we?" "I don't know." He met her eyes, and the vulnerability there nearly destroyed her. "I told myself this was just business, just an arrangement. But then you moved in and you were everywhere. In my kitchen making tea, learning Korean, asking questions about my day, and I didn't know what to do with that. With you. So you avoided me. So I avoided you," he agreed. "Because I didn't know how to be around you without..." He stopped. "Without what?" "Without wanting more than what we agreed to." The confession hung between them like a living thing. "I want more too," Flora whispered. "I didn't think I would. I thought this would stay business, but then you came back tonight. You flew through a thunderstorm because you felt something was wrong. And I can't pretend anymore that this is just an arrangement." Cheng Mao stared at her. "Flora, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be a real husband to you. Then we'll figure it out together." She stepped closer. "Because I don't know how to be a real wife either. We can figure it out together. I'll probably mess it up," he said roughly. "I'll work too much and forget to communicate and default to business mode when I'm uncomfortable. And I'll probably call you on it. And we'll fight. And we'll figure it out. Just like that? Just like that." For a long moment, they just stood there, staring at each other in the wreckage of their living room. Then Cheng Mao reached out, cupping her face with a gentleness that made her chest ache. "I'm going to kiss you now," he said quietly. "If you don't want..." Flora pulled him down and kissed him first. It was nothing like she'd imagined. It was desperate and clumsy and perfect. It tasted like coffee and relief, and the beginning of something neither of them had planned for. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cheng Mao rested his forehead against hers. "This changes everything," he murmured. "I know. I'm probably going to be terrible at this." "Probably," Flora agreed. "But you'll try. And so will I. And maybe that's enough." It was enough. It had to be enough. Because this story, this impossible, unexpected, beautiful story was just beginning. The transformation wasn't instant. Cheng Mao didn't suddenly become perfect. He still worked too much, still struggled with emotional expression, still defaulted to business mode when uncomfortable. But he tried. He started coming home for dinner every night, started asking about Flora's day, and actually listening to the answers. Started leaving little notes. "Thought of you during my meeting," coming home early that made her smile. Flora started learning his patterns, the way he got quiet when stressed, the way he'd stand at the window and stare out at Seoul when he was thinking, the way he'd reach for her hand without seeming to realize he was doing it. They had their first real fight 2 weeks after the break-in, something stupid about Cheng Mao canceling plans to take an emergency call. Flora accused him of reverting to old patterns. He accused her of being unreasonable. They both said things they didn't mean. And then Cheng Mao did something that shocked her. He said, finding her in the bedroom where she'd retreated, "I prioritized work over you. Again. And that's not fair when I promised to try. I overreacted," Flora admitted. "I know your work is important. You're more important." He sat beside her on the bed. "I'm still learning that. But I mean it, Flora. You're more important than any deal or meeting or merger. I need you to be patient with me while I figure out how to show it." "I can be patient," Flora said softly. "As long as you keep trying." "I'll keep trying." He pulled her into his arms. "I promise." The changes accumulated. Cheng Mao started taking Sundays off, something his assistant said he'd never done. They explored Seoul together, finding hidden restaurants and quiet parks. He held her hand in public now, not for appearances but because he wanted to. At night, they fell asleep in the same bed, wrapped around each other like they'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. "I never thought I could have this," Cheng Mao murmured one night, his fingers tracing patterns on her shoulder. "This kind of connection. I convinced myself I didn't want it." "What changed?" Flora asked. "You." He kissed her forehead. "You refused to let me hide. You pushed back when I tried to keep you at distance. You made me want to try. I'm glad I pushed. So am I." Flora turned in his arms to face him. "The rumors are going to be a problem, you know. When people find out this is real, that we're actually together, let them talk." Cheng Mao said, "I don't care anymore what they think. The only person whose opinion matters is yours." "And what's my opinion?" "I'm hoping," he said, pulling her closer, "that you think I'm worth the trouble." Flora kissed him softly. "You're definitely worth the trouble." 6 months into their marriage, Cheng Mao took Flora back to Nigeria to meet her family properly. Not as the business arrangement he'd purchased, but as the wife he'd fallen in love with. Her father opened the door and stared at them, at how Cheng Mao's arm was wrapped around Flora's waist, how she was leaning into him, how they looked at each other. "Papa," Flora said softly, "I want you to meet my husband." Properly this time. Dinner was awkward at first. Her parents clearly didn't know what to make of this new dynamic, but as the evening wore on, as they watched Cheng Mao help Flora in the kitchen, laugh at her jokes, look at her like she hung the moon, understanding dawned. "You love her," her father said quietly when Flora stepped out to take a phone call. "Actually love her?" "Yes," Cheng Mao said simply. "More than I thought I could love anyone." "I'm sorry," her father said, and there were tears in his eyes. "I'm sorry I sold her to you like property. I thought I was saving the family, but I nearly destroyed my daughter's happiness." "You didn't destroy anything," Cheng Mao said. "You gave me the greatest gift of my life. I just had to learn how to appreciate it." That night, lying in Flora's childhood bedroom, she asked, "Do you regret it? That we started the way we did?" "Never," Cheng Mao pulled her closer. "Because every day I get to choose you. Not because of a contract or obligation, but because I want to. Because I love you, and that means everything." Flora kissed him in the darkness of her childhood room, in the place where she'd once cried herself to sleep over this arrangement, and thought, this is how love stories are supposed to work. Not perfect from the start, but willing to become perfect together. 1 year into their marriage, Cheng Industries held its annual gala. The entire Seoul elite would be there. The press would be circling, and this time, Flora wasn't nervous. She wore a stunning gown, red, Cheng Mao's favorite color, on her, and stood beside her husband as he greeted guests, with confidence she'd earned. "You're staring," Flora murmured as they took their seats for dinner. "Can't help it," Cheng Mao said, not looking away. "You're the most beautiful woman here." "You're biased." "Absolutely." He brought her hand to his lips. "And I don't care who knows it." The whispers had long since changed from speculation about his sexuality to fascination with their love story. The cold CEO who'd melted for his arranged bride. The Nigerian woman who'd captured Korea's most eligible bachelor's heart. During his speech, Cheng Mao did something unexpected. "Before I discuss this year's numbers," he said, his eyes finding Flora in the crowd, "I want to say something personal. A year ago, I made the best business decision of my life. But it wasn't until recently that I realized it was also the best personal decision of my life." He extended his hand toward Flora, and she rose, moving to stand beside him with her heart in her throat. "Flora," he said, still in English so she'd understand every word. You came into my life as a solution to a problem. You became my wife because of contracts and obligations and mutual benefit. But you became my everything because you refused to let me hide. You saw past every wall I built and loved me anyway. You taught me that loving someone doesn't make you weak, it makes you stronger than you ever imagined. Tears were streaming down Flora's face now. So, I want everyone here to know, Cheng Mao continued, his voice rough with emotion, that this woman beside me isn't just my wife in name. She's my partner, my best friend, the person I choose every single day. And I am the luckiest man alive because she chooses me back. The applause was deafening, but Flora didn't hear it. She only heard Cheng Mao whisper, "I love you," as he pulled her into his arms. "I love you too," she whispered back, "even when you're terrible at being human." He laughed, that rare, genuine laugh that she'd worked so hard to coax from him, especially then. They kissed in front of Seoul's elite, in front of cameras and gossip columnists and everyone who'd ever doubted them. And Flora thought, this is what happens when two people refuse to accept that their story is supposed to be cold. Sometimes the impossible becomes inevitable. Sometimes the arrangement becomes the love story. Sometimes you just have to be brave enough to choose each other. Every single day. If you loved Flora and Cheng Mao's journey from cold arrangement to consuming love, make sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel. Drop a comment telling me your favorite moment. Was it the break-in? The first kiss? The gala speech? Your support keeps these stories coming, and I read every single comment. Hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next story. Because love doesn't always start perfectly, but it's always worth fighting for. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.